Hey everyone, this is Vince. Today I'm going to give you my review of Stephen King's The Stand. I've been reading through his books one by one, starting from the beginning, and I was going to rank them for myself, and I figured, hey, why not put it up on YouTube so people who are interested can argue with me? No, I'm just joking. If I would really like to know how you ranked it and if you agree with mine. But anyway, this is Stephen King's fourth book after Carrie, Salem's Lot, and The Shining. It often is seen as his best book, and in fact it's often ranked by him as one of his favorites, though he does talk about how annoying that is, that many people think his best work was done on his fourth book, so that now it's all just downhill. It's also his longest book. The uncut edition clocked in at about 1,200 pages. He ended up having to edit it down about 400 pages for his publisher. And that's because, for one thing, his publisher just didn't feel like he had enough clout to publish a 1,200-page book that it would sell nearly as well as an 800-page book. There were also some practical concerns, and that is the cost of production. So paper and binding would have made that go up a whole lot, especially around this time, especially when Kindle's not available, and so that would have been another thing to deter buyers. Once he did become a household name, he had the clout. It was about 12 years later he was able to publish the whole thing. He said before that he considers the uncut version the definitive version because that's how he intended the story to be told. However, the cut version is what he published, and that's probably what made people fall in love with it. This review is about the cut version. I felt like it was first published that way. It's how the story came out. That's what made his fans love it. The uncut version is much longer, mostly with extra background about the characters, though it does have some extra parts to the story, but none of it really moves the story forward. I mean, if it did, it would be in the uncut version. Fans like it, and they possibly even like it more, but honestly, I think there's a good argument to be made that the story just would not have been as popular if he would have originally published the extra 400 pages. So, like, everyone's not a diehard fan, and in fact, most people probably appreciate the shorter version. So I'm going to get into my review, and then I'll talk about how this book ties in with the Stephen King universe. When I started these videos, I said that I was going to make them with no spoilers, but then I realized how hard it was to talk about them without actually talking about them. So if you haven't read it yet, let me just say that you should. It's considered one of his best books. It's also a pretty old book, so I'm going to assume that if you're watching this video, you have read it. My first category I like to talk about is serendipity and predictability. I like when the story is not predictable, and I like when everything doesn't hinge on luck. So The Stand, to me, kept me in suspense the whole time. I felt like things did or didn't happen like they should have, and so I ended up giving it a 5 on that. Ending. Stephen King doesn't have the best of endings. He knows it. Everybody knows it, especially with some of his earlier books. This one, I had a problem with the ending, and I talk a lot about this in my video on the Gospel according to Stephen King, so you can find that on my channel if you're looking for it, where I talk about the Gospel according to The Stand. But it's kind of confusing exactly what happens at the end, because you have this hand of God, quote, that's what people keep calling it, but it really doesn't have to do with God intervening, or does it? Like, the story seems to indicate that God didn't intervene, but everybody thinks that God intervened, and so you kind of leave the story thinking that maybe, well, God did intervene there, and exactly why did these people have to go make the stand anyway? Like, that's what happens at the end of the book. They have to make a stand. Well, why'd they do that? Was this going to happen anyway? Was this nuclear bomb going to explode? Anyway, so I gave it a 4. Clarity and coherence. This is a lot like Ending, except it's not just the ending that I'm worried about, but the whole story. Did it make sense? Was there questions that I felt like were unanswered? And I gave The Stand a three here, and I don't know. I considered giving it a 2 even, but I felt a 3 was good enough. Because really there was just the questions were not just about the ending, but when they saw these visions. Well, Mother Abigail talked to them in the visions. Does that mean that? But she doesn't know when they came to see her that she was in these visions. So could the vision have said things that were not Mother Abigail? Was it really Mother Abigail? And the Dark Man, the same thing. Like, were they really there in the visions or not? I just found that to be very confusing. And so anyway, that's also I guess the way that it tied together. It was obvious to me that he started writing a book, and he did. He meant this to be like a retelling of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Like, he wanted to be a good versus evil book. But I think that he got halfway into it and started realizing, oh, this is very complicated, because now the good group over in Boulder is getting to be just like the bad group. And he even intimates that if they keep going, they're going to become just like this other group. And so I think it was kind of obvious that he had to switch courses. And he talks about that. Like, he's very open that he wrote this book, and then he got writer's block because he didn't quite know how to finish it. And so he created this bomb situation in order to if you don't remember, there's a bomb that kills Nick and some of the other main characters. He does that in order to get rid of some of the characters because it was becoming very confusing. And he didn't know how to end it. So anyway, I gave it a 3 on that. Readability and engagement. Almost my whole review of books is based on whether I enjoyed the book. And it was very readable. It was very engaging. I mean, the uncut version begins a little differently than the cut version, but in the cut version, I mean, it begins right away. You see this car coming down the road, it's swerving around, and this guy's sick, and it just grabs your attention right away. So anyway, I gave it a 5 on that. Characters, I thought he did a great job with characters. In fact, when he wrote this book, he said he had this idea of writing a book where he just introduced more and more characters almost every chapter. And that's exactly what he did. And of course, that's what got him in his problem. He had too many characters, but he did a great job with each one of them. He almost devoted chapter after chapter to just character development. You grew with the characters. You knew what they were thinking all the time. Anyway, that's why this is one of his best. So characters, I gave a 5. Existential depth. This is a category where I just wonder. I think about what does he talk about that has to do with the human condition? Like, does he tackle these big questions that we have? And yes, in this book, he really wrestled with an awful lot of things: jealousy, hatred. What would you do if the world was coming to an end? Would you be on one side or the other, like on the good side or the bad side? The fact that the people on the good side were becoming the bad side, the fact that the people on the bad side were acting like the people on the good side, like, what exactly is good and bad? Anyway, it was a terrific book. Again, I talk about this a lot more in The Gospel According to the Stand, if you want to read that, or if you want to look at that on my channel. And so overall enjoyment, I gave it a 5. I was fully immersed. I would definitely recommend this book as one of Stephen King's best to others out there. Adding it all up, the book got a 4.57, so I'm just going to round that up to a 4.6 is where I will put this on my list of books for Stephen King. All right, Stephen King universe. Oh, before I do that, I'd like to say something about the audiobook. I love the audiobook. I think that you can read this either in print or in audio, and I think that that either one of those does a terrific job. Anyway, the Stephen King universe. If you've read Stephen King books, you know that one of the most appealing things that diehard fans love is these crossovers that he does in his book. And in fact, they get bigger and bigger until, you know, we realize that almost all of his books have to do with his magnum opus, which is The Dark Tower. So this is the first time in The Stand that we do actually see a crossover. So he's written, you know, 3 books so far, and his last book, The Shining, actually appears a little bit in this book. There's a point where Mother Abigail thinks about having these premonitions and how she's always had these premonitions, and how her mother used to say that all people were born with that to a little degree. And the way that she talks about it, she doesn't actually use the word shine, but it's very obvious that she is talking about The Shining in exactly the same way that Halloran talks about The Shining in the former book. So there's your first crossover. The biggest thing about this book, however, is that it introduces Randall Flagg. And if you know much about the Stephen King universe, Randall Flagg is going to be a huge antagonist. He really only appears as a main character, I guess you'd say, in 3 books. 4 books. Well, anyway, if you're not talking about The Dark Tower, you really only have 2 books where he appears, and that is this book and The Eyes of the Dragon. And then, of course, in the Dark Tower series, you see him in almost all of the books as he's a main character. But it is interesting. I didn't think about it until I started reading these again. I realized, oh, he's only in actually 2 books that are at the Dark Tower, and that is this book and The Eyes of the Dragon. All right, that is my review. I just ran through it pretty quickly for you. Do you agree with it? I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments.